Hi. In this lesson, we're going to be working with how to understand slope-intercept form. Now, before we get started, slope-intercept form is one of the most important equations in all of Algebra 1. Anything that acts as a linear type of situation or problem is going to be able to have a form known as slope-intercept form. This form is going to help us graph, help us find the y-intercept, help us find and determine situations about a topic that acts linearly. Okay, so first thing we want to make sure is what is slope-intercept form? You probably all remember where you've learned it before because we have learned it in previous years. The slope-intercept form is known as y equals mx plus b. Y and x act as placeholders. They're what you use on the graph, x coordinate, y coordinate. But what essentially is important in this formula is the m and the b. So if you can, write that down. Y equals mx plus b. M represents the slope, or known as the rate of change, or also average rate of change from a previous lesson. And b represents your y-intercept. Well, what's your y-intercept? Remember, y-intercept is where it crosses the graph on the y-axis, and it has a coordinate of 0, comma something. So notice the problem that you have on the right. You have a graph. It crosses the y-intercept at 2. That coordinate, if I were to write it, would be 0, comma 2. So every time that you notice the x is equal to 0, that's your y-intercept. That's going to help you in this formula because when we have to build this equation that's going to help us graph, the y-intercept is usually what we start off with, which is our starting point, which is at 2. And the slope is going to be however we found it in the past. Remember in the past we said last lesson, if it's 2 points, we use slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If it's a table, we use the counting method, which is counting by the patterns. Put the y over the x, change in y over change in x. And if it's a graph, we do rise over run. How much do we go up and over? Okay, so all of those topics that we learned in section 1, we're going to come back to here so that we can always find the m. And again, y and x you never touch, they're just placeholders. So you ready? Let's begin. There's going to be two types of problems that we know that are going to have a positive or negative line. It's going to be a slope that's positive or a slope that's negative. Every time that you have a line that has either positive or negative, it's going to use y equals mx plus b as my graph. Okay? So then we move on to example 1. Example 1 says, determine the slope-intercept form of a line. Important word, slope-intercept form of a line. So anytime they tell you to create a line or slope-intercept form, you're going to remember y equals mx plus b. But remember, in the question, my apologies. In the question, we have to remember y equals mx plus b. I have to find the m, which is the slope, and I have to find the b, which is the y-intercept. Well, wait, what's the y-intercept? Y-intercept when x is equal to 0. Look right here. X is equal to 0. So what does that mean? That means that -3 is my b, which is also my y-intercept. So for the first one, A, how do I create my equation? It's going to be y equals, remember, never touch the y, m, which they told me was 3. That's the slope. That's how steep the line is, 3 over 1 technically. X I don't touch, and b is the y-intercept, which is going to be -3, and that's it, I'm done. So when they ask you to build the line, you need the slope and you need the b, the y-intercept. Let's work on b. B, again, they give me the m, awesome. What about the b, the y-intercept? They gave it to me because x is 0. So this right here is your b. B is equal to 5. So what does that mean? We're going to create y equals, what's your slope? -2. X, what's your b? +5. So we're going to put up +5. And that's it. I'm done. Sounds simple, but remember, slope-intercept formula was one of the most important formulas in order to be able to graph an equation. What type of equation? A line. So we have to know the slope and also the y-intercept. Okay, so now they're going to try to trick us by giving us a table. Notice they didn't give us a point and they didn't give us a table. Wait a minute. How many points are on this table? Not just one, they gave us 4. Is that more than enough? Yes, it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask myself, okay, I have to find the y-intercept. Y-intercept is when x is equal to what? X is equal to 0. Try to find it. The x-intercept is right here. I'm sorry, the y-intercept is right there. How do I know? Because the x is equal to 0. So that means that this coordinate would be 0, 3, which means 3 is my what? 3 is my b, which is my y-intercept. So what are we missing? We're missing our slope. Wait, how do I find the slope of a table? I use patterns. So ask yourself, 3, 6, 9, 12. What are you counting by? You're counting by 3. So I know the change in y is going to be +3. What about the x? 0, 2, 4, 6. What am I counting by? 2. You remember how to find the slope? Slope is m, which is rise over 1, which is y over x. How much do you go up in y over x? It's going to be 3 over 2. That's my slope. So piecing it all together, it's going to be y equals 3 over 2 x plus my y-intercept, which is positive 3. And that's my final answer. Okay? A little bit different, but don't overthink it. The first step is find your y-intercept because that's your starting point. Sometimes it's in the beginning, sometimes it's not. Find when x is equal to 0. And the next thing is find the slope by, in this case, because it gave you a table, find the patterns. So I'm going to do the same thing for b. So for b, notice it gave me 2 zeros in the table. Don't get confused because we're looking for the y-intercept is when x is equal to what? X is equal to 0, which is right here. So I know my b is equal to negative 2. I have to find my m. How do I find my m? By slope. So I'm going to ask myself, what's the pattern in the x's and the y's? Pattern in the y's is counting by how much? Counting by 2. What about the x's? So my m is going to be y over x, which is going to be 2 over 1, which is simply just 2. So piecing it all together, my formula is going to be y equals my slope, which is 2x minus 2. Don't put plus minus because a negative is always going to win. Now remember, sometimes some of our students are going to want to get confused and put the b in the front. Here's the most important thing that you could probably ever learn about any type of standard equations as well as in a slope-intercept form. Your y-intercept is always at the end. So if you ever get confused, the y-intercept is always at the end and the slope is always in front of the x. Okay? Y-intercept at the end, slope-intercept, in slope-intercept form, and the slope is always in front of the x. Now, some people may ask, why am I using the slope-intercept form to create a line? Think of the name. Slope has a slope. Intercept is the y-intercept. Hence the name slope-intercept form. Okay? All right. So what I want you to do for example 3 is try this one. Try this on your own. Put the video on pause. Try these two. Look for the y-intercept. Find the slope and piece it all together. Be careful with the slope because you could have negative numbers as well. Okay? So best of luck on this one. Pause the video. Play it when you're ready and I'll be here. Okay, so in example 3, the question says determine the slope-intercept form. Don't forget, it's y equals mx+b. I gotta always remember that. Always write it down. It's gonna help you out. I have to find the m and the b. So what am I gonna do? Let's find the b. B is when x is equal to what? X is equal to 0. That's my y-intercept right here. So for a, b is equal to negative 3. Awesome. What about my slope? What's my pattern? Count the y's, 5 to 1, 1 to negative 3 to 7. Hopefully you agree it's counting by negative 4. It's going down by 4. What about the x's? 4, 2, 0, negative 2. I'm counting down by negative 2. So what's my slope? My m is going to be negative 4, change in y over change in x. And if I divide that, I get 2. So piecing it all together, this is what my answer is going to be. It's going to be y equals my slope, 2x. Where does the y-intercept go? It goes at the end, so it's going to be 2x minus 3. I'm going to box it in, and I'm done. And that's how I know I did it right. Hopefully you got that one as the right answer as well. So now we're going to try B. So for B, I'm going to go look for the y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. It's right here. My B is equal to 0. Now I got to find my slope. How do I find slope? Change in y. Negative 2, 0, 2, 4. It's counting by 2. Negative 4, 0, 4, 8. It's counting by 4. In a positive direction, so that's why there's a plus sign. So my slope is going to be y over x. Now when I simplify 2 over 4, it's going to be divide both sides by 2, and it's going to simplify to 1/2. Some of you may have 2. Remember, the bigger number 4 is on the bottom, so the bigger number has to stay on the bottom. That's why it's 1 over 2. So now I have my b, which is my y-intercept, and my slope. So I'm going to piece it together. My slope is 1/2 x. And then my y-intercept is technically plus 0. But should I write that? That's kind of strange, isn't it? So because you really wouldn't want to put plus 0, you're actually going to erase that and keep it as just y equals 1/2 x. And that's it. What does it mean that the y-intercept is 0? Where is y-intercepting 0 on the graph? It means that your graph crosses the origin, the centermost point of the graph. Okay? So when you don't see a number at the end, that means there is no y-intercept, which means the y-intercept is actually at 0. It's not that there isn't. It's just that the y-intercept is at 0 and you normally don't write it. Okay, last two examples. We worked with points, we worked with tables, and now we're missing the graph. Now, graphs look tricky, but they're actually not because they give you the y-intercept right away. If you remember from the previous lesson, the y-intercept is right on the y-axis, so which is right here. So I know my y-intercept, my b, is equal to 1. I know that for a fact. But the question is, what's my m? How do we find the m in a graph? What do? We do rise over run. So what do we need to find? We need to find a second point. Look for the graph. Look where there's a second point. Hopefully you agree at 1, 4, there's another point there. So what am I going to do? I'm going to ask myself from 1, how much do I go up and over? How much do I go up and over? Up and over. So hopefully you agree you're going to go up 1, 2, 3. That's a positive direction because we're going up. And we're going to the right, how many? 1. So my slope is going to be rise 3 over run 1, which is simply just 3. So what does that mean? My final answer is going to be y equals mx, which is 3x. Y-intercept always goes at the end, which is positive 1. And that's it. That's my final answer. What does this mean? It means that I cross the y-axis at 1. And to find my other points, I go up 3 over 1. But you simply put at 3 because 3 over 1 would look a little different than what we're used to. And that's it. That's how you do it. Okay. Last problem, example 5. I want you to pause the video, try this one on your own. Remember, we need the y-intercept as well as the slope. So best of luck. And once you're ready, press play. If not, you're going to watch me answer it right now. So for example 5, the directions say determine the slope-intercept form of the line from the graph below. Slope-intercept form, we already know the formula. It's called y equals mx+b. I need an m and I need a b. So I'm going to first find my b. B is simple. It's just whatever crosses the y-axis, which is -2. But what about the m? M is a little bit different because now it's a negative line, which means my slope should be negative, but I have to find a second point. It doesn't matter where you find it. Try to find the first one. I'm going to find this one right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask myself, how much do I go up? I go up 1. That's a positive direction. But then I go to the left, -2, negative direction. So what's my slope? My slope is rise, which is 1, over run, which is -2. If I simplify this, put the negative on the outside, and it's just going to be -1/2. So how do I write my final answer? My final answer is y equals my m, which is -1/2 x. And then what's my y-intercept? It goes at the end, which is -2. And that's my final answer. So what does this mean? It means I start at -2 on my graph, and I go up 1 over to the left 2. Or I could even go, let's think about it. I can go, I'm going to change colors for this one. I can go down 1 to the right 2, and it's the same exact situation. Okay? All right. So in this lesson, it's very important. Y equals mx+b is one of the most important equations because it helps us graph a line, but also helps us find the y-intercept from the form that it's in. I need a slope and I need an intercept. What intercept? The y-intercept. Hence the name slope-intercept. So every single time that you're trying to find the y-intercept, remember, y-intercept is when x is equal to what? X is equal to 0. Okay. Thank you for watching. I hope this helped, and I'll see you next time.